Hello, everyone. Welcome to this talk. It's called Gaining Ground. I'm not entirely sure where that name came from, but we've got four fantastic dairy farmers on the stage here, and we're going to try and have a really discursive session. Thank you very much for choosing to come to this talk. I know there's some stiff competition, and it is getting to the end of the day. But what I wanted to get from this talk was what I'm often very lucky to get in my day-to-day job, which is often visiting farms and asking them about why and how they have got to the farming system that they have, which often produces really interesting stories. And equally, over the last few years, as Yo Valley, we have put talks on about specific topics and ended up with questions generally about dairy and regen dairy. So the idea here is to try and hear some farming stories, and hopefully you guys can be thinking of some questions about how we do grass-based dairy really well for us to mull over in the second part of the talk. So my name's Tom White, and I'm the regen dairy farmer at Yo Valley. I'm going to briefly introduce my speakers because they're going to talk a bit more about their farms and themselves in a minute. So I've Will Mayer, who is kindly standing in last minute on this talk, Sophie Alexander from down in Dorset, Andrew Reese, who's come a long way from West Wales, and Jonny Ryder, also West Country based. And so each farm is going to talk for 5-10 minutes about their own history of their farm, system that they've come to, and after that we're going to talk a little bit and hopefully incorporate questions from you guys. So be thinking of those on how we do dairy really well, grass-based systems fit for the future. Okay, Andrew.
Thank you, Tom. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Tom, for the invitation to come and speak. Tom did ask several weeks to be involved, but they only informed us Wednesday or Thursday that we wanted to do some slides. So all I've done is sort of gone through my camera roll and dump a load of pictures onto slides. But it was quite a reforming sort of going back sort of several years through pictures. Although my daughter did ask, like, why is your camera roll just full of cows and grass and soil, Daddy? So I suppose the story of where we sort of come from, going through this whole camera, it did make me think that 2018 was probably a turning point. A very dry year for us, having been spring calving for probably best part, not quite a decade, but West Wales, grass always grew, fertiliser on, it was great, easy. Wheels sort of fell off in 2018, so this is midsummer feeding out because there was nothing else to sort of feed. So that sort of started the thought process in the head of, well, is what we're doing the most resilient for our business? Is there something we could be doing better? So we first started playing, introducing diversity, so introducing herbal lays. We were a Farmer Connect demo farm at the time, so we did a few split paddock plantings, but didn't manage it any differently. Still managed it on pretty much like a 21-day round. We would ryegrass, white clover. So ultimately, all that diversity sort of died out. So then we sort of moved, what else can we do? We were heavy nitrogen users. And for other sorts of things, we moved to looking ways to reduce nitrogen fertilizer, moved to foliar applications. We imported a tone fert. So we made marked reductions in nitrogen fertilizer over a 3-4 year period. Again, sort of, as you go to events like this, you're learning, you sort of fall down that rabbit hole of what else can we do. So understand, so if we're going to keep that diversity, it means we got to do something with our grazing management. So we started playing with higher densities, adaptive grazing, longer rest periods, leaving higher residuals, consuming more, trying to trample, sort of whole range, trying everything. I suppose the idea of sort of, that's a nice idea, we'll give it a go. So I suppose sort of trying to demonstrate pictures of sort of increasing sort of stock and density, gone from very high utilizations to low utilizations. So I was sort of trying everything, so to speak. Into that again, sort of introduce sort of what we do with winter. So we've aimed now our R1s, like first year born heifers, stay out year round. We'll do that with sort of a bale grazing sort of technique. It's not without its limitations in sort of West Wales with rainfall and heavier soils, and then sort of deferring grass forward to use to extend the grazing season for older stock as well. So that's deferred paddock. That paddock, we're playing around with long deferments. So the paddock and the daughter in there, so sort of 7-year-old for scale. That was sort of, we did like sort of a full, sort of almost a full growing season rest just to see what would happen. And then with that, then we played around with planting sort of multi-species annuals as well. So it's 2 different years with there. We sort of just, you listen to sort of Gabe speak about diversity and planting all this different diversity, getting the different plant sort of classes in there. So I was like, why not give it a go? So planted it. Then it goes, well, how are we going to utilise this? So then we wanted to graze it, which was fine. But you can see in the picture on the left, a lot of material left on the ground. So my original plan was, right, we'll sow this annual, then we'll drill our perennial species into that in autumn. I've got an ancient tine drill. I dropped it in the ground and I don't think I went 5 metres and completely bunged it up. So I was like, we can't do that. So we left it, but the regrowth of, because a lot of those annuals had seeded, and we had a second growth of that. So we actually had probably 3 grazings off that planting, and then sort of put the perennials in the following spring. And then we sort of used mainly sort of probably C3 plants the first year, second year. Well, how do we get those sort of C4 plants? I know C4s aren't sort of necessarily native to the UK, but it sounded exciting, so we give it a go. And it's quite fun to see sort of cows grazing something which is taller than them. And ultimately, our own goal is sort of, we want healthy soils. We've got healthy soils. We're going to grow healthy plants. And ultimately, that's going to feed into animal health. And it's all sort of, it's that cliche of it's the journey, but each sort of step you take, you learn something new. But it's also understanding you're going to make mistakes. And the common phrase we sort of used earlier was, if you're not winning, you're learning. So sort of accepting that you can get things wrong, but as long as you sort of take that as an opportunity to learn and move forward from that. And so not everything's going to improve in 12 months. It's going to take time. And then I suppose our sort of next spot is sort of starting to look at the farm vertically rather than in a 2D sort of plane. Being Pembrokeshire, if you sort of know the area, lots of hedges. So change the way we manage hedges to allow animals to browse. Our next sort of goal is sort of planting browse lines for animals as well. We did some riparian planting this winter. We're sort of semi-holding off till we know what Welsh Government are going to decide to do from a not just a subsidy sort of point of view, but which way they're going to class sort of trees. I don't want to put in a browse line and then them class it as a hedge. So we want to understand, get our head around that. But the next goal is further diversity, and it's more plant species and browse to give animals what they want, basically. So that's a quick rattle-stop tour of the last 7 years.
Perfect. I think we'll go straight on to Jonny, please.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Tom. I'm going to be even quicker because I much prefer questions to actually describing the farm. I find that quite tricky, but I'll give it a bit of a go. Not the easiest farm to describe, really, because there's so much going on at different times and a bit chaotic. But yeah, we farm about 2,000 acres, and I suppose 2/3 is off the Crown Estate and the other third off neighbouring farmers. And we've got exceptionally good relations with all our landlords, really, which is important. You know, we farm, you know, they're very understanding of our strange ways of farming, really, and exceptionally understanding of our even stranger sort of animals that we have running around. So, yeah, that's very important to us. And I guess we've always been grazing. I'm the 3rd generation on the farm and the 3rd generation who's been really into grazing. And I've been really fortunate. My grandfather and father were exceptional at grazing, really into it. They were different to how I grazed, but they were very good. But mostly they were really they were real innovators, and they really taught me that actually doing things differently was okay, and that it was good fun, really, and it was challenging and interesting. So that's really stuck with me and been a really good sort of lesson for me. I've got 4 children who are very keen on farming, very supportive as well and helpful, and a wonderful set of staff at home as well. So, yeah. So, and Rachel as well, most importantly, sounding board, and also trying to really put a lid on some of my crazy ideas. But yeah, so the animals, we've got a lot of cows on the farm, probably 18 to 1900 head of cattle at various times of year, and we've got goats on the farm as well, probably almost too many to count because they're all in different places. But yeah, we've got a lot of goats and a few Wiltshire horned sheep and a few pigs as well. So obviously that's a lot going on, and it's all off grass. So it's incredibly important to keep things as simple as we possibly can. So we cut out a lot of things that we don't really think need doing. So as soon as we took on the farm, really, we went to once-a-day milking. Milk quota leasing was incredibly expensive, so it was a bit of a no-brainer, but that revolutionized the farm. And to be honest now, I just don't even think, I can't think of people milking more than once a day, really. So that's been a huge thing for us. And then really, we were very highly stocked. So in 2005, really to reduce the stocking rate and make the farm more resilient and cut the workload, we went organic and immediately stopped feeding concentrate because we didn't feel it would be cost effective. And at the same time, soon afterwards, we stopped using antibiotics. And that has probably been one of the most staggering things, that our cell count has dropped away, plus our mastitis levels have dropped away since doing that. And it's been absolutely incredible. So we also at the same time really started suckling calves on cows. So all our calves are reared on cows, and the same with the goats. The kids are reared on the nannies as well. So we try and do things really simply. We use no AI. We use all bulls. So we run bulls with the herd, and obviously billies with the things. But that's allowed us to simplify things, but most importantly, breed an animal that's probably adapted to our way of farming. So coupled with that, as at the same time being organic as well, it's been important to provide the grass to them all the year round. We're a dry farm in the summer, so developing a grazing system that actually works organically and provides food has been a challenge. But luckily enough, Andre Voisson, he came to the farm, grandfather had a signed book that I dug out, and I read it, I suppose, when I first started on the farm, and it really struck me, some of the stuff he was saying about rest periods, and you know, the 21 days the yield is X, and the next 5 to 10 days it's double that. So that really stuck with me, and I think out went the irrigation that we had on the farm that was not sustainable and too complicated and way too complicated for me. So out went the summer feeding of the stuff, and it was growing more grass in the summer and different species of grass to take us through. And that's been longer rest periods and have developed over time. We've developed this system that I think works and is resilient. And then I suppose the farm had a lot of elm trees, and those all went, so it's a very open farm. So 10, 12 years ago, we planted 7 kilometres of hedges on the farm, so are now pretty mature, as you can see on the right-hand side. And then 2 or 3 years ago, we started another whole batch of hedge planting along with the Crown Estate. And you can see that on the left-hand side. So there's another, I don't know, how many have gone in, Rach? 10 kilometres have gone in. And we put apple trees and other trees and other fence lines. So virtually every paddock fence line on the farm has got trees or hedges on it now. These are cows suckling calves on there. So we work with our neighbours. So we've planted a herbal ley, 70 acres there as a break crop on his conventional arable farm, but that's converted to organic. That's to benefit us, and hopefully will have huge benefits for him when he ploughs it up again plants it again this autumn. These are more younger cows and calves. So at the moment, for every 5 cows that calve, 2 will suckle calves and 3 will milk. And these are growing stocks, so we're very fortunate in who we sell our products to. So we've got a really good relationship with Nick Green. So all our animals on the farm go to his butchery, and that's worked exceptionally well. So these are growing stock, and you can see there, this is a couple of weeks ago, we're stored up this feed, and rather than making hay and silage, this has all been fed to them, and we're grazing it right out. So we non-selective grazing on long rotations and rest periods. We'd be probably only grazing the milking platform 5 times, and some of this downland grass will only graze once or twice a year. But we're doing multiple shifts on those, because those are shifted 4 times a day, and the milking cows will be shifted up to 4 to 6 times a day at this time of year. And that's that mob of cattle again. Those are our goats that are actually in for once, but they're strip grazed on a every day, new break every day, and they go out every day of the year. They come in at night in the winter, but they're out every day of the year. There's the goats again, causing chaos. And yeah, that's about it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think I wrote down lots of questions there, but we'll save questions and try and keep to times. Sophie, over to you.
Thank you very much, Tom. I've been wanting to go to Jonny's farm since I first started researching about starting our own dairy, and now I've met you. Can I have an invitation, please?
Same.
We might need to persuade Jonny to do an open day for us.
So 2017, 18, you might remember we heard that BPS was being taken away. So I run a organic farm. It's largely been organic since 2011. We had someone else's young stock, dairy young stock, for about 6 years. But the thing of BPS going, it was, okay, so what's the next enterprise going to be? How are we going to plug the hole? And camping and weddings just didn't resonate with me. It wasn't how I wanted to spend my time. And I took on a very depleted farm. It really needed livestock. And it was a very gentle, easy ride to have someone else's who looked after them, and I carried on with the arable. But I think a farm really springs to life when you have grazing cattle. And in the immortal words of a soil scientist that came to the farm, emeritus professor of Cranfield soils, he said, if you start a dairy, it'll kick-start your entire ecological system. It took about 2-3 years of research. How are we going to do this? Starting from scratch. There were no buildings, no dairy. There hadn't been livestock on the farm really since sort of the 70s or earlier. We're on chalk, very light soils. It was very depleted. So thought, milking bale, what a wonderful way to have a very small footprint. But I'm not at the coalface. I haven't got the expertise to be the herdsman. And I was told I would not find a herdsman, a herd manager of the caliber I needed if I expected them to move a milking bale round every day. Also, we own the farm, so we built a new dairy. And also the farm is small enough that it's about 1,200 acres, that the cows can physically walk to the parlour and be out at every far-reaching perimeter. So we're in a rotation of 4 or 5 years, clover lays, legume lays, lucerne, and then we do 2 years of cropping still. We're block spring calving, so I wanted an enterprise where in our dry months when the cows aren't milking, which is really from Christmas to March, where I had some other form of cash flow, and that's what the arable crops provide. We were once a day to start with, but again, because I'm not equipped to do all the work myself, I needed the expertise and the labour units, the staff, the team to make it work. So after doing once a day for a year, we moved to twice a day. And The other thing is that we went on a shopping trip. I mean, it was very, very exciting. We went to see farms all over England, largely organic ones, except Jonny's. And we came up with a kind of hybrid system. It's partly like a New Zealand system. It is grass-based. We now grow some of our own concentrate to feed. The cows get about a ton a year. It's crept up. It was about 750 kilos, but most of it's grown on farm. And we looked at cows from everywhere. We looked at, the typical LIC, Jersey, Friesian cross, wonderful animals. But at the time, again, at this sort of pre-2020 mark, there was so much discussion about small beef calves coming from dairy herds and how there was no market for them. And it just seemed terrible that a newborn calf was going for 10 quid at the market. So we chose a cow actually from Scandinavia. It's called a Viking Red. It's a heterogeneous mix of a Norwegian Red, Swedish Red, and Danish Ayrshire. We went out to look at Pro Cross, a really, really impressive cow, but big, and we outwinter all the year round. So we needed something lighter on its feet. And the Viking Red, I'm sorry I haven't got any pictures. I blame Tom for the late notice of the slideshow. And but they're a similar weight. They're 500 to 530, 50 kilos. We're breeding them to get smaller, and they're strong. Our cows walk 2-3 kilometers a day, and they've adapted really well. We brought in 300 bulling heifers at the start of COVID, 2020, and we do AI them. We genetically test them. What's it called? There's a special word for it. Genomically test. Thank you. And so we're selecting them still. We haven't found the sweet spot where this is our 5th lactation. It's really early days in establishing a dairy herd, but we're very pleased with them. They're really good cows, and they're doing a good job, and they've had a lot of challenges thrown at them. So one of the reasons for going to Sweden is that they have high health status and that they have no endemic IBR, BVD, Johny's, TB. We have now contracted TB. We have now contracted Johny's. But we had a few years without having to manage any of those problems. And so then, we run beef bulls for anything that's not AI'd. And it's has done what the emeritus professor has said it would. It's really brought the farm's ecosystem to life. There's still a long way to go. But anecdotal evidence as well as scientific evidence, I think, is entirely valid. And though we've had a lot of biodiversity monitoring, it's also just that people come and they say, the bird life, the insect life is improving exponentially. And the balance has been, we couldn't manage really 300 cows. I'd way overestimated the carrying capacity of the farm because it needs the cows to build the nutrients. So we're milking more like 250 now. And it's a balance between the cows building the fertility to produce the grazing, but we've got to start somewhere, and we started at a low base. So by reducing numbers, I feel we're more resilient, because like a year like this in the drought, if I was trying to carry 300 dairy cows, I mean, we're 500 about altogether, including the young stock and followers, it would be nail-biting. There'd be nail-biting episodes as it is, starting a new enterprise. And it's been a really steep learning curve and very challenging, but absolutely the right thing to do is have the livestock in an organic system. So we're just trying to improve on that going forwards.
Super. Thank you very much, Sophie. Will, we're getting on in time, so if you could give us
Super fast.
super snappy lowdown on what you've been doing over the last few years, please.
Yeah, no, of course, I'll be really quick. So I work on Yo Valley Farms, so the business's own farming system. We moved there back in 1961, and we had these sort of diverse enterprises. It was a conventional farm back then. Then the decision was made to turn organic, so we've been organic for the last 30 years. And actually what was interesting over those 30 years is, with the yoghurt obviously being a real big priority for the farm, we had a real focus on dairy output. So our own farm was completely focused upon dairy output. What was really sort of an amazing moment for us is sort of getting into regen agriculture and sort of thinking, well, we're organic dairy, but maybe are we just ticking a few boxes here and producing milk at the same time? When we sort of opened our eyes up to sort of ecosystem processes, it was really exciting, and sort of integrating stock. So over the last sort of 5 to 6 years, we've had a really interesting journey on our own farm. So we're currently at 800 hectares. We've reduced our dairy herd numbers. We've increased our dairy beef. We've increased the dairy beef grazing out on our woodland pasture system. We've dramatically changed our actual dairy grazing itself, and yeah, we're really adapting. And I don't want to dwell too long because I think there's plenty of questions, but I suppose we very much jumped 2 feet in, and events like this gave us even more excitement. And me and Tom probably came back with one too many projects, and we still are running those projects now.
Yeah, but there's been, a transformation of that farm over the last 5 years, hasn't there? Which probably, looking back, has been very much fueled by Groundswell visits and insights from other farmers we've spoken to, just like these ones. So thank you, Will. If anybody is interested in Will's agroforestry project, we did a split talk on that 2 years ago, and you can pick that one up online. I think now I'd love to open up the floor to questions if people are ready. I've written down lots of questions if people aren't, but I'd much rather they came from you if they can. So have we got we had a roving... Have you got the mic? Super. Yeah, so any hands up for questions for our farmers, please?
Hi, it's Kevin Duncan from the National Trust. I'm a land use and farm advisor, and I was just interested to know how have the yields gone, and therefore sort of the economics of the changes that you've made, because it has to pay at the end of the day, as we all know. So,
is that to anyone in particular?
Nobody really touched on yields or how the system works from an economic point. So yeah, just maybe all of you have a crack at it, if that's appropriate.
We'll start this end.
Yeah, sure. So the sort of very much a year of couple of transitions to sort of give us a springboard into regen. So we probably dropped our yield by 500 litres across the sort of per lactation. So we were at 8,000 litres per cow, now to 7,500. We've actually maintained that a lot more than we were ever expecting. We budgeted to drop it to 6,000, but I think that actually the next level grazing and sort of regenerative grazing systems that we're talking about, that we don't have to lose milk with that implementation. Hopefully you guys are also finding the same thing. Our overall production of milk from the farm has actually gone down quite a lot. So we did have 180 up on Yoxter Farm, and we had 240 cows down at Holt Farm. Over the last couple of years, we've transitioned those to 2 different block calving systems. So one is an autumn block calving and one's a spring block calving. That's been great. So we're really spreading our risks and sort of challenging the different seasons, and also getting the efficiencies of going block calving. And it's great for sort of the mob grazing technique as well. But we've reduced Yoxter by sort of the whole farm system by around 100 cows. But it's really interesting, and that question sort of always comes up. But we're very much sort of changing our mindset, as in, well, how many calories output per hectare? So we've got 800 hectares on our own farm. We've reduced our output of milk, but we've also massively increased our dairy beef. We've got sheep on cover crops, and we've also got our arable crops as well. One figure that I really want to come to once we've sort of finished our transition and really kick into a gear is how many calories of output per hectare. And maybe that's sort of what we should be looking at in the future as well.
Yeah, and beyond calories to nutrient density. Hashtag. Sophie.
Well, the economics of being either organic or not organic, we tested very early on, not actually with the dairy herd, but we ran a conventional part of the farm for 3 years and benchmarked it against the rest of the farm, which was organic. And I tried to remain as impartial as possible. This was about 2015 when we absolutely had to make the decision which way were we going to go. And observing the margins over that time convinced us that organic was a very viable way to go. And by then, I was really pleased that it had shown itself to have resilience and sustainability, because I found that my interest and fascination in farming organically, I couldn't ignore by then. I didn't like hemorrhaging cash flow to buy chemicals. So we haven't really found the sweet spot with the cows yet, but yes, there are margins, and it largely depends on the milk price.
Well, Yeo Valley's procurement team are here if you wish to speak to them later on.
Hands up. No, they're not going to put their hand up.
I think it's important to remember that yield is nowhere is an important profit driver, and sort of what these I suppose practices and sort of changes are made due to our actual cost base is probably more important than what's done to yield. But just put some figures around for our own farm. No 2 years are the same, and what we do each year isn't the same. So we would typically be in a sort of 6,000 litre, 500 kilos of milk solids, 1.2 tonne of cake sort of farm, pretty sort of change things around. But then last season I only milked once a day and fed 200 kilos of concentrate. I've gone back to twice a day this year for more social reasons than financial reasons, but even once a day doing, I think we did 3,500 litres, and did we touch 300 kilos of milk solids? It's hard to know how much milk we actually produce because we have calves on cows as well, so milk per cow is a difficult one to calculate. But I still felt I had a tax problem last year, so even with that remarkable, we've gone from a high of probably 2 million litres an annum to last year Billy did 750,000. We are conventional first milk supplier, but yeah, I still felt we made enough money.
So you're still experimenting a bit, do you think, to get to the sweet
I don't think
spot
I'll
there?
ever settle, to be honest with you, Tom.
Johnny.
Yeah, yield. Well, luckily, I'm no believer in yield being relevant at all to profit. And I suppose over the last 10 years, I've been vying with my friend Matt Bowley as which one of us is actually the lowest yielding dairy herd in the country. And I think I'm probably winning now. So, yeah, it would be below 3,000 litres. We bring cows in and out from suckling, so it's very hard to say exactly what our yield is. It's high fat and protein, but we're not too worried, really. I'm a believer of eliminating costs such as silage making, AI, fertiliser, meal, teat spray, antibiotics, vet and med up to a point. But I'm a believer in eliminating them rather than diluting them, really. And I think it has no relevance whatsoever. And as long as our costs of a percent of turnover are somewhere between 40 and 50%, we're happy, really. And that's the main driver. We want to be the last one still there if things get really tough, and milk price isn't a massive driver for profit for us. So, yeah.
Thank you very much all. Any further questions? Should we have Rob back there, and then we'll come to the front.
I suppose following on from that, really, I think 3 of the panel you're spring block carving, aren't you? And Will, you're split block carving. Certainly the demand of organic milk is a fairly level demand. Are you guys using any tools, or how do you kind of manage the supply side to make sure that you're not producing too much milk in the spring, or are there any tools available to do that? Because obviously if everybody produced milk on your system, we'd have way too much milk in the spring and no milk in the autumn.
Yeah, that is well spotted. It was not a conscious decision to have the split of farms here like that. We, as Yeo Valley, are managing milk supply by recruiting farms who are a mixture of systems. For organic milk particularly, there is very little ability to move milk around the year with the likes of powder and things like that. So we have to work with farms with the diversity of systems and who effectively flatten the profile of supply functionally.
Are the farmers in the panel using things like suckling calves to try and flatten their profile? I suppose that's part of the question as well.
Great question.
Yeah, we'd bring cows back in the autumn that were suckling. Potentially, we'd bring a number back in, and would suckle for 4 or 5 months, and then bring them in at the end. And that was something we were developing when we were supplying a cheese manufacturer. But actually, the person we're supplying now wants the spring milk, so it's not so much of a thing to do that. But that's a perfectly feasible thing to do, is to suckle the calves on the cows for anything of 3 to 4 months, and then bring them back in and milk them in the autumn to level the supply.
I suppose on with our 2 split blocks, so we've got 240 down at Holt Farm the autumn, so that's by far the majority. But from those 240, we also keep all the calves for dairy beef. So the dairy beef calves go up to our rearing unit, and actually the vast majority of our spring milk is actually into the calf rearing itself. So we've designed the system to have the benefit on both ends. So we don't get many collections in the spring, even with 100 cows up there. So they're almost our rearers of the beef system. So we're kicking up to rearing 250 beef animals a year. So a lot of that milk will be taken up there.
Jonny, do you have an indicative idea of how much milk the calves in your system get?
What, from suckling the cows? Yeah. Well, I suppose they're getting 40% of the milk potentially. So yeah, quite a significant amount. But it's not milk from the milking platform. So the beauty is, if we were feeding them artificially, we'd have to milk the cows, put in the bulk tank, cart it to the animals. It's all milk from the milking platform, whereas the suckler cows go up onto the downs on rougher grazing, and are able to rear those calves with no concentrate feeding and produce a resilient calf that's been taught how to graze the way we want it to graze. So, yeah.
Super, thank you. Okay, we had a question at the front here.
Well, I was wondering if you could give us some more details on your grazing system.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I suppose we've got lots of grazers here, so I think everyone should have a key in on this one as well. So we started around 4 to 5 years ago, coming to Groundswell, getting really inspired about mob grazing. Taking that to our dairy platform would be such a massive change. We're talking about scaring our herds people. So we started off with our beef. We only had 40 beef at that stage because we've been growing and rebalancing. But anyway, started off with 40 beef with no fence collars, whatever you want to call the grazing system, regenerative, adaptive grazing, mob grazing. We really started to learn. The no fence collars were fantastic as a tool because we didn't have to set up too much infrastructure to start learning straight away. So we were doing daily moves, grazing half the plant and trampling half the plant. We've moved on a lot since then. We saw enough of animal performance on the beef side to give us a bit more confidence with the dairy. And then we sort of started to get a bit more into the adaptive grazing, not quite taking the whole of the plant, whole half of the plant, leaving a third, trampling a third, and sort of adapting to the different types of sort of weather conditions and growth rates. But very much where we're at now on the dairy unit is next level grazing. So our pure focus on the next level grazing is optimal recovery and really focusing in on leaf stage. So allowing it to hit that blaze of growth, get a taller grass area, but without losing nutritional quality. I think that's the most important thing, is you don't have to lose that quality if you capture it at the right time, but keeping on top of that leaf stage is probably the most challenging thing. So before every paddock that we enter, instead of plate metering now, we monitor leaf stage and we sort of record it the whole time. If we're going beyond the optimal recovery and beyond the leaf stage that we are trying to target, we know that we need to change the rotation round and change how we're doing this. But one kind of really amazing thing is we are seeing ryegrass doesn't just go to the third leaf stage and start dying. It's not sort of, I know there's manuals out there that say that, but if you have really healthy soils, a resilient farming system, you can get more leaf stages. So what we're trying to do year on year and sort of before the summer solstice and after the summer solstice is target that higher leaf stage. So basically what we're trying to do is create a massive solar panel on our farm and harness as much of the sun's energy as possible, because then that all goes into great food.
Thanks. Anyone else want to add anything on grazing? Jonny, I have a side question for you on that, because Andrew, your pictures of the grazing you're experimenting with look to me a lot like Will's, with really high covers and significant residue kind of trampled into the soil. But Jonny, I think you told me that you felt that you could graze things a bit closer in the UK, and I think you might have been doing this longer than anybody else in the British dairy industry. So could you tell us a bit about your grazing system? And I think having Andre Voisin on your farm is probably the coolest thing I've heard in a long time.
Well, yeah, that was grandfather. So, but yeah, no, I suppose I went to New Zealand and when I was 19 and I was left on the farm and there was no grass and a lot of cows, and I was told I had to feed that amount of grass every day and of that area every day, and it was a bit traumatic, but I had to save every blade of grass, and I suppose that's never ever left me, I suppose. So, and it hasn't always been a good thing. Probably I've been too hard, but I just feel that I feel there's only two types of grazing. There's selective grazing, where you allow them to leave a mount and pick out and choose what they want, or there's non-selective grazing, where they graze a whole lot, and it could be evenly. You could leave it higher at certain times, but you're still taking even spread. And you can't teach cows to just graze a third of the pasture. They'll take the third of the stuff they like and leave the rest long, and then that will dominate the sward eventually. But also, I feel you're also wasting the opportunity to graze that other 2/3 down and lengthen your rest period by 3 times the length. And I think it's the rest period that really does the beneficial effect. That's what gets the roots down. That's what pumps the carbon into the soil and gets the soil life going. But also, I just think it has a profound effect on the yield of the grass afterwards going forwards, and the resilience and the smothering of weeds. And that's what we see, really. So I think that's important. I think the whole experiments of when you graze it down tight and the roots disappearing, I don't think that was done on farm. I think it was done more in short, cutting the grass continually short on very short rotations in a laboratory. So I don't think I think we've been led down the wrong path personally. But I think there's only two types: non-selective or selective, and it's just that how long the rest period is on those two systems and how many times a day you graze the grass, and if you give them breaks, how many breaks a day you give them. And if you give them more multiple breaks, they certainly just concentrate on grazing down what's in front of them. And the mob now on 4 times a day, they just go in there and take everything evenly, even to the extent that we're not grazing down super tight. We've got the problem that they're actually eating the ragwort now for the first time ever. So it is a tremendous effect, and I think it's either going above 4 to 6 times a day or just once a day. I think 2 or 3 times a day you don't get that effect. You've got to go above the 4, possibly to the 6, to actually get them to take everything and perform as well at the same time. It's getting the performance on that longer grass as well that's the challenge. So it is a balance, but that's what we and we did, rather than use a plate meter, we have a marker field, and we have a rotation length that changes throughout the year to that marker field, and that's how we monitor how we designate the grass to get back to that marker field as a certain. So now we're going to 70 days that we've got to get back to. We've got to last 70 days before we get back there, and we can't feed concentrates. We can't really buy and feed because there's not a lot about the right quality. So we're forced to develop this system that provides us grass all the time.
I think for observation, that's probably moving more to what Jonny's describing, that to make cows milk, that leaf to stem ratio is really important. And we've found, especially through spring lean residues, that all you actually do is increase the stem part of that ratio. So particularly before summer solstice, we would be doing a more full grazes, and that competitive nature of multiple moves a day increasing stock density, so you get that non-selective, but the multiple moves drives the intake as well.
So we wouldn't be able to do what we do without multiple moves, and a bat latch is definitely really handy, so that just takes a lot of the labour out of it. But I totally agree, it has to be completely non-selective grazing. whether that's in the rumen or sort of laid flat on the wall in the soil for the next rotation. That's kind of, yeah.
Thank you very much. Hands up for any further questions.
Kia ora. Kiwi in the room. Hi. Collars. No fence collars, whatever you call them. Halter, collie, all that sort of thing. Any experiences? Will, you've mentioned in beefies. Would you do it in dairy? Anything from anyone in the speakers? Thank you.
So we had it on our beef herd. It was fantastic for them. My wife wasn't as keen because I had the app on my phone, and there was a few sort of 1 o'clock in the morning dings, and off I went. But anyway, it was really good and gave us a real platform to learn. Our beef have actually moved beyond the no fence collars now, so we've scaled up to 258 hectares of that wooden pasture grazing system, and we're going up to sort of trying to shoot it up to 500 rotating around. So the economies of scale just sort of tipped way in the favour of fencing and conventional fencing for that one. But we're still trying to replicate the same grazing strategies with them. In terms of the dairy, I'd find it really, really interesting if we could bring that technology into dairy. We were kind of asked, would we want to trial it? And I suppose we were only just getting our heads around how to do it ourselves. So sticking with the kind of conventional tools that we had gave us a bit more of a comfort blanket. I think there's definitely potential. I mean, there's talk of like a rolling line, and I suppose what we're all trying to do is get as much of an animal impact and trampling. And if we could do that through the technology, that's fantastic. But then I'm also very much in the favour of keeping it simple and sort of keeping your costs down. And so there's a bit of a conflict. You'd have to sort of do an individual business case, and I'm sure there's an affordability level for those collars to make sense. But we haven't done this, but I would be open to looking into it.
Anyone else have an experience? No, I've yet to see them used on a dairy farm on dairy cattle in the UK anywhere.
Can we have collars that do everything, not just fencing, not just heat, not just rumination, but all of it, or preferably even a chip that you can put in and last a lifetime, or nearly a lifetime. It would be brilliant, you know. Otherwise, there are all these different gadgets, one for fencing, you know, something else around their ankle for lameness. And because ours out winter all the time, when we have had collars on them, it chafes their necks. And A, it must be rather uncomfortable for them, and B, it makes them look rather ragged, and I don't like it.
I think the tech needs to develop a bit further there yet. Okay, we had another question over by the camera there.
Jonny, it was lovely to see your playful goats in your pictures. It looked like they were on mob grazing as well. Can you talk a little bit about them and then on their rotation, but also how you bring browse into their diet? And is that part of their indoor overnighting?
The goats, they are on the milking goats. It would only be possible really to combine them with the cows because of the worms. So they're on a rotation with the cows on part of the milking platform. They probably cover 40% of the milking platform, but we'd only probably graze them on the same bit of ground once, maybe twice a year. And they have daily breaks, and most of the time of the year they'll probably come in at night, but this time of year they're staying out. So there's hedges as well. They can browse on them, but we've got to be a bit careful because certain times of the year they'll just strip the bark. So yeah, browse is a bit of an issue. The younger ones, they're just too hard to contain for daily breaks, but we'd put them in a field for probably about 6 days and then move them. But they do get plenty of browse, but that's probably when they break out, and that is reasonably regularly. So, you know, they do contain them. They're wonderful animals. They'll always go back home all the time after they have broken out. So someone will say they've seen them on their farm, and you'll go and look for them on the farm and can't find them, and they'll be all fast asleep in the shed, as innocent as anything. So, yeah, they are a challenge. But I think probably we could develop something when we get the fencing right, where they do more of a weed control issue over a larger area of land and browse rather than graze set bits of paddocks. Maybe that'd be more useful. And as for winter browse, we haven't done that. They're difficult to feed. They're very fussy eaters. They do like really good haylage and hay. But yeah, there's plenty more we can do with them to develop that area. Yeah.
Thanks. Right, I've had the 5-minute warning, so we've probably got time for one or two more questions. Are there any hands up? Will, do you want to take that one?
Sorry, when they're in the shed.
Yeah, when you're milking them, do you have to give them feed?
Yeah, so they'll be out grazing whenever they can for us, and then that forms the majority of their sort of ration. And sort of on our own farm we do silage for the winter as well, and that silage is also added in with the rotation up there. We have multi-bicrops as well, so that we don't plant any monocultures on the farm, and the majority of that all goes into the winter storage for the cows. So yeah, they get fed extra.
What I meant was that you give them nuts.
Yeah. So we do. I suppose it's every farm's different, but we definitely do, and we do in the autumn. We're looking to become 100% homegrown feeds in 5 years' time. That's our sort of own farm's ambition. To get that, we need to work out dry mealing in the parlour. So that involves new parlour feeders and sort of a bit of an engineering job. But at the moment, the majority of our homegrown feeds all goes to the cows through crimped. So we have a roller crimper, which is great. So we can combine bicrops, so we're growing all sorts. So we're growing blue lupins and spring wheat together, pea oat barley together, rye and vetch. So we've got complete diversity within our annuals, and we can capture that within our farm system.
Sophie?
I was just going to say we grow bicrops for the cattle. So if we break a lay in the spring, it'll be wheat with beans or oats and peas. And we take it to harvest, we combine them. They don't need to be separated because they're going to be milled for the cow ration. And though it's milled and powder, it does actually go through the feeder.
Cracking. Let's scratch that.
I think it gets blocked up occasionally, but on the whole, it's fine. So, but really, they can only eat up to about 4.5 kilos max a day if they're going through the parlour, and that's the max they'll get.
Andrew, what's your system there?
Yeah, we're conventional sort of compound nut, but trying to source it best we can, which is actually very difficult. We wanted to use as locally grown as possible in a blend, but the practicalities of parlour feeders and unblocking augers was not very nice. So I went out this spring just trying to find a compound. I don't want anything GM and as much UK produced as possible, but there are very few compounders who can do that. And I think it's a point that's sort of, I think, overlooked within the dairy market of how much GM-produced produce is in animal feed.
Thanks. And Jonny, you don't feed anything at all? Super. Well, on that note, I think we're out of time. So I would really like you guys to give our farmers a huge hand here because they've done, I think, a stellar job.